Renting a car in Europe may seem complicated, but in reality it's not. And in this video I'm gonna cover all the most important things that you need to know before booking your car and driving across borders, including a few country-specific regulations. But let's get straight into it. The first thing may seem obvious, you need to have a valid driving license. And a few car rental companies require actually that you have held your driving license for at least 1 year. You can check that typically in the rental conditions. If you have a European or UK driving license, it's not a problem, of course, so you can rent any car in any country of Europe. If your driving license is not written in Latin letters, for example, it's in Chinese, Japanese, or any Arabic language, then you need an international driving permit. More on this subject later. If you have a driving license which is not European but it's written in Latin letters like in Spanish or English, it may or may not be accepted. But let's check these in the next subject. The second important thing, if you don't have a European or UK license, is the IDP, International Driving Permit, which is absolutely required if you have a driving license that is not written in Latin letters, as we previously said. So what's happening if you have a driving license, for example, from the US or from Australia? Well, it may be or may be not accepted. There is no clear regulation about that. And more importantly, there are few car renters in Europe that actually give the car to you, even without an IDP. But then if you get stopped by the police, they may require it. Or if you have an accident, you may have problem with insurance, not committing to pay because you didn't have an IDP. I got an interesting experience actually last year in Malaga, where I rented a car and next to me there was an American guy that booked a car but didn't have an IDP. And the car rental company didn't want to give a car to them unless they would do an expensive full insurance, which in my opinion was a bit of a scam. And for this reason, I highly suggest, if you don't have a European or UK driving license, to do an IDP. It costs only between 20 and 30 US dollars in any country where you do it. It's basically a translation of your driving license in multiple languages. It lasts for 1 or 2 years and you can do it on the website of your country car association. As easy as that. It takes only 10 minutes, but it will give you such a peace of mind when you're gonna rent the car. And now let's go down to a very important subject, which is crossing border regulation and fees. Of course, Europe open borders is a dream come true. And you can drive easily, for example, from Germany to France to Italy. There is not really a border control. So you can drive through and you don't even realize that. But in saying that, you have to declare to your car rental company all of the country that you're gonna drive through. There is typically a cross-border fee that goes between 20 and 50 euros. And you can pay that when you pick up the car at the car rental company. Until 2021, there used to be a green card where there was a declaration of all of the countries which were covered by the insurance. But nowadays, basically, you can visit any country in Europe. However, it's very important that you give a list of the country you intend to go to your car rental company. If you want to visit countries that are outside of Europe, you will need a green card, and also in this case you will have to ask that to your car rental company before actually you pick up the car, because they will need to organize that, and also because a few car rental companies actually don't allow you to take the car outside of Europe. Also, make sure on the car rental condition that the countries that you specifically want to go are included into the list of allowed countries, because if you intend to drive, for example, to places like Serbia, Montenegro and the Balkanic countries, not every single car provider actually allows that. To summarize that, honestly, if you plan to visit the usual countries like Spain, Portugal, France, cross the border between them, Italy for example, or Germany, typically it's not a problem once you pay the fee, but declare the countries to your car rental company. And talking of rental companies, how can you find the best deal for a car but still using a trusted company? What I've been doing for the last 5 years is to use a comparative website, and I'm gonna put a link to this website in the video description, where all of the car rental companies are ranked between 5 and 10 stars by the customers like myself. What I usually do, I filter between 8 and 10 stars just to get the most trusted company, and I select my car from their list. I haven't got any trouble at all in the last 5 years, so I highly suggest this website. And on top of that, I typically add a full insurance for just 7-8 euros a day, which gives me such a peace of mind. Also because European villages have such narrow streets, not to talk about the parking spaces. And it may happen actually to scratch the car, and then you give back the car and you have a bill of 400-500 euros, which is definitely not the way you want to finish your holiday, isn't it? So have a check, book well in advance, especially if you travel to Europe in peak season, which is from mid-June to late August. Most of the car rental companies in Europe require the use of a credit card, typically a Visa and a MasterCard. If you have only American Express, just make sure that the car rental company accepts American Express, and you can see that in the rental conditions once you book your car. There are only a few companies that accept a debit card, and if you find this possibility, just make sure that you have enough money in your bank to cover the initial deposit that can be between 1,000 and 3,000 euros. Another important thing is that the rental companies want to have the physical card, so you won't be able to pay, for example, with Google Pay or with Apple Pay. Another important thing, based on my personal experience, notify your credit card company that you're traveling to Europe, and specifically that you're gonna rent a car, just to avoid any block that the credit card can do on your card if they see, for example, a big amount of money spent on a single day. Because if they do that, it's gonna be very complicated to unblock and rent the car. The safest bet is gonna be to have a Visa or a Master credit card, and you will be good to go, provided you have enough money on that for your deposit. Another document that you need when you rent a car is obviously a passport, and I'm pretty sure you got a valid passport, of course, because you arrived to Europe. But it's very important that you're gonna take this passport with you when you drive a car, as well as the driving license and the IDP too, because if a police stops you, they may want to check it. And now let's talk about another important thing, which is a car rental insurance in Europe. Now let me say first that I'm not an insurance advisor, so everything I say is based uniquely on my personal experience. So let's start first with a third-party liability insurance, which is mandatory across all of the European countries. It will be included in your contract, and it covers damages and injuries that you may have caused to a third party during an accident. Secondly, there is the collision damage waiver, or CDW, also called loss damage waiver, LDW. This isn't technically an insurance, but limits your financial responsibilities for damage to your rental vehicle. So for example, if you scratch the car in a parking area, or you dent the car against a wall, or you have a car accident and it's your fault. Unfortunately, this CDW or LDW comes with an excess, which is typically between 500 and 3,000 euros. So it's quite a bit of money. As I said, the collision damage waiver is not mandatory, but more often than not included. But make sure to check in the rental condition if it's there. If you want to cover this excess, I highly suggest to buy a full insurance, so you won't have to pay anything in case of accident or small damages to the car. You may also check out actually your credit card, because sometimes the credit card offer a full insurance to cover this excess. But you may also find out, like in my case, that my credit card gives also an excess on this full insurance that is $500. So it's better than nothing, but it doesn't cover me 100%. And that's why I usually do a full insurance on the aggregator website that I mentioned before. It costs only 7 to 8 euros a day, and it also includes roadside assistance, so it's perfect for a no worries experience. Doesn't matter what insurance you take, I always suggest to document fully your car, both externally and internally, with photos and videos, because there are always dishonest car rental companies that are gonna claim pre-existing damages when you return your car, and they may want you to charge 300, 500 euros for that. And even if you have a full insurance, you will have to stop there maybe for 15-20 minutes just for all of the papers to fill in. Honestly, not worth it, just because taking few pictures doesn't cost anything. Another important thing to keep in mind when you pick up the car is to make sure that you have all of the car documents with you. Besides the rental agreement, you will need also the vehicle registration document and also a green card if you're planning to drive outside of Europe. And remember, if you are planning actually to drive across borders, you need to specify the countries to the car rental company. Don't forget that, because if you cross the border and maybe you have a problem with the car, you will be absolutely in trouble with the car rental company. And now let's talk about the highways and the tolls. Unfortunately or fortunately, the countries in Europe don't have a single regulation. I'm sure you already know that on the highways in Germany, for example, there is no speed limit. Meanwhile, in Italy or in France or in Spain, there is a limit between 110 and 130 km per hour. Another important thing is that a few countries have tolls where you have to pay for the use of the highway. Meanwhile, other countries, once again, like Germany, doesn't have a toll. And then there are the vignettes, which are basically stickers that you have to put inside the car if you want to use highways in a few countries, like in Austria, in Switzerland. Luckily, in the last few years, you can buy actually digital vignettes, like for example in Hungary, so you don't need any more stickers. So it's very important to check, based on the country that you want to visit, if you do need these stickers before actually using the highway. Just to finish up the total confusion, since 2025, France has decided to start removing these tolls, and they added cameras where they take pictures of the cars going through, and then you have to pay on the highway website the toll. And remember to do that before returning the car, because otherwise the highway company will send the invoice to the rental company, which will forward this bill to you, adding also a management fee. Another important thing also to keep in mind is that some countries have low emission zones in the cities. So you will be able to access these cities only if you have country-specific stickers. So for example, to access the French cities with a population of 150,000 people or more, you will need a Critère ticket 1 or 2. And if you rent the car in France, that's not a problem, because usually it's included by the car rental company. But if you rent a car, for example, in Germany and you go to France, you won't have these stickers. And you can't buy the other, because the stickers have to be organized by the rental company, and if it's a German company, they won't do it. So in this case, you will have to leave the car outside of the city, and then you will need public transportation to access the center. And that's what usually happens if you pick up a car in Belgium and then you want to visit Paris. So also in this case, check about the low emission zones that apply to the different countries that you're gonna visit. And then there are a few country-related regulations that you should keep in mind. For example, if you visit Germany, France, or Switzerland or Austria during the winter time, you will need to make sure that your car has winter tires. Or even if you visit Italy, you have to make sure that you have snow chains into your car. In a few countries like Germany or France, you need to have also reflective vest inside the car, which probably you already know these vests, because these green vests were very famous in France and all over the news when the people were protesting in the streets. Another important thing you need to make sure to have in the car is the warning triangle, which nowadays is required actually in all of the countries in Europe. And that's why it's so important that when you rent a car in Europe, you're thinking of crossing border, to save the list of the countries you're going to drive to the car rental company. So equip the car with all of the requirements of the countries you're going to visit. Renting a car in Europe is definitely not stressful. I've been doing that for the last 25 years and I haven't got a single problem. But you definitely need to get prepared based on the countries that you want to visit. Hopefully this video has helped you and has given you more confidence. Now, if you're still with me, I guess you appreciated the effort in making the video. So put a like and follow the channel, and I'll see you next week with more videos about driving and itineraries.